Wonderful. So I'm going to be talking a little bit about just finding success and failure today. So it might not go the whole hour, but I'm a talker. So the biggest thing is I want to preface by saying a lot of this is just based on my experience. I'm not an expert in any of these things, so I'm just going to be talking about the experiences that I've faced with each of these like different circumstances. And everyone will have like a different thing that they've gone through. So I want to preface by saying don't compare any of your traumas to my traumas, as yours may be worse, yours may seem like lesser, but they're not. So everyone has like different experiences that are very meaningful to them, and it's very important to not compare those to others, as you are very valid in whatever feelings you're feeling. Okay, so we're going to start with about me. These are just snippets from my resume. And now everyone's resume is going to look different, but mine, I've got a publication, I've had 2 internships, I'm a very accomplished researcher, I've presented at multiple conferences, both at Ohio State, SWE ones, I've won a SWE one before. I've done a lot of work with plant trials, I've led plant trials at Hershey. I was able to reduce a process from 12 hours to 10 minutes. I worked a lot with quality excellence in Abbott. So it's very, your resume is pretty, I was talking with my mentor the other day, and then we were talking about imposter syndrome and stuff. And he goes, Emily, your resume is imposter syndrome inducing. And I'm going, what? I don't get it, because I don't see all this. This is what I see. When I see myself, I see someone like, I laugh a lot. And I do not take the greatest pictures a lot of times. I get very candid shots. It's me with my best friend Harper. She's looking great. I'm over here like struggling, holding it together, which is how I see myself. I'm not a resume. What I see are my mistakes mainly. So on my resume, like, yeah, I got a publication, but a big part of that, I remember in my research lab, I was trying to syringe filter hemoglobin one time and squirted it on the ceiling, and had to figure out how the hell am I going to clean a ceiling? I'm 5'2". This just isn't going to work. I've had issues where all of a sudden a tube like burst off of a system and started flinging around like a wild snake kind of thing, and like spraying, my nanoparticles everywhere. And I'm going, well, this is a shit show. So it's things like that I remember. And even when doing plant trials, I clicked the wrong button on a processing machine and stopped the line for like a little bit by accident. So those are the mistakes that I see. That's what I see in my resume, all of those mistakes that I made to get to those accomplishments. But those aren't what's talked about. But a lot of time, you hear these hero success stories. All the myths and legends is all about the journey, but their journey is just pretty insane. I'm not Malala who fought the Taliban. I'm not Odysseus who fights the Cyclops. I'm Emily McDonald, who's gone through some struggles, but nothing to the caliber that an epic proposes. But it's those failures and those mistakes that really have defined my successes for sure. I've had doubters along the way. I remember the first time I came to the College of Engineering, I had a male peer say to me, you're definitely going to get a job coming out. You're probably going to take mine because you're a woman and they need to meet like a certain standard. And that really took me aback. I went, what on earth? We're supposed to be a school that's dedicated to diversity, and this stuff isn't supposed to happen anymore, but it does. I faced a lot of sexism when I went to the ER, surprisingly. I was told I didn't know where my pelvis was. I'm going, that is where most of my female, like all of my female organs are, and it tries to kill me once a month. I think I know where my pelvis is. But it's things like that that you don't expect, and it's almost like you're trying to prove all of these doubters wrong, which is very difficult, especially when you got a bunch of mental health issues that are a lot of times induced by all of this stress that college has. I am a very stressed out person. I tell people that I have so much stress that my little carbon-based life form should be a diamond by now. But no, it's filled with stomach ulcers and IBS instead. That's what I get from my stress, which is horrible. It's not a fun experience. And it just builds anxiety that just makes accomplishing successes so much more difficult, because all you want to focus on are those failures. And it's hard to see those failures in a good light. And then you get traumas and heartbreak. A lot of the trauma that I faced was, many microaggressions from people. I was in a really bad car accident. I was supposed to die and kept being told by doctors you were supposed to die. How did you survive? This is a miracle. It's like, that's not what I want to hear, guys. And then heartbreak. I mean, this could be, I lost a friend, not to death, but because a guy liked me and not her. And so she stopped talking to me. And I was like, really? We still have this middle school drama sometimes? And I've had actual, heartbreak of, I went through a really bad breakup in a relationship, and it's just hard. And so these are all these, what you see as mistakes and failures that really can define you as a person, but they're not really who you are. I really like this quote by Henry Ford. The only real mistake is one from which you learn nothing. I know that all of my mistakes, I have gotten some kind of positive outcome from, whether it's, okay, we're not going to click this button to turn off the line by accident, or if it's trust is the most important thing for me in a relationship. And if someone doesn't show up for me in the way I need, it's okay for me to put up boundaries and to maybe even cut them out of my life. Some of these lessons are a lot harder than others, and they're going to take time to accept as well. So it's a journey. There's a lot of ups and downs. It's not just a straight line across. And some days you got good, some days you got bad. It's just how life is. I mean, so I've dealt with imposter syndrome, internalized misogyny, perfectionism, and all the other bullshit that life brings. So it's difficult, but each of them, you add some baggage on top of it. So it starts to get really, really heavy after a while. And you almost feel like you're not going to be able to accomplish anything because I've just got all this baggage with me. Who's going to want to take on this baggage? So let's start breaking some of these down a little bit. But as you go through life, remember that success, I really like this quote. I have a lot of quotes in here, just kind of like quotes. Success is doubling from failure to failure with no loss of enthusiasm, from Winston Churchill. So it's just, even though this journey of life has all these ups and downs, you just got to keep moving forward sometimes. So yes, it's going to be harder sometimes than others, but one foot in front of the other, and you got to try to remain enthusiastic about it. Keep that curiosity, that excitement for life throughout a lot of different things, because it's easy to lose. I know some of the other sessions, before said it's like we've lost that whimsy that we used to have as children. We've lost a lot of the curiosity just because we're told that you have to follow certain standards of education. It's like there's going to be one answer. No, you can't do this thing, you can't do that thing. You need to follow these strict guidelines, which really affects imagination, in my opinion, and affects curiosity, as we're told to think inside of the box so much of the time just going through school because we have to in order to get the grades that we need. But in reality, we need to start thinking outside of the box because we're the next innovators. We're the next generation of people who's going to create the next big thing. And yeah, it's a lot of pressure, but you need to fail in order to get to that caliber. But we're not told that. We just see these amazing success stories. So let's break down some failure a little bit. So imposter syndrome. What is it? It's doubting yourself, doubting your abilities, and feeling like a fraud. I'm sure everyone's experienced this at some point within their career, within their academic career, within their actual career. Guess what? So a lot of other people. Michelle Obama has come out and said, like, I feel like an imposter a lot of times. One of my favorite lines from Albert Einstein, when he's like, I feel like an involuntary swindler. I'm like, me too. But I mean, these are some very world-renowned people, both for science and just the way they are. And so everyone can feel like a fraud sometimes. Biggest thing for me, when I went through school, horrors of GPA. So your GPA defines you a lot in college. I came into college thinking I was the best of the best, as I was one of the top in my high school, but I realized very quickly that I was a big fish in a small pond at my high school. So I came into college and I was not doing well. I was getting C's on exams. I was, it was the first time I was not getting A's, and it was tough. And all of a sudden, like, I have this lower GPA. It was, I think it was a 2.7 at the time. And then I'm told by all the universities I'm applying to my major, because GPA was so important when I was applying to the major, that you're not good enough. Nope, you don't have the GPA. It's not good enough. It's not good enough. And so it started for me to question my ability to actually do anything, because everything was so based on GPA. Even though I knew, like, I can do experiments, I can do this, I can do that. Like, I'm great in a lab. I'm horrible on an exam. You know, some of it's I don't know how to study. Some of it's I have dyslexia that I refuse to get officially diagnosed because I don't want that listed on my record. And it's just things like that. So my GPA just was not good. And I kept being told, like, you're not good enough because your GPA is not good enough. And it sent me to a very not good place for a while, until I realized this is a bunch of nonsense, because I worked with a lot of my mentors and found mentors, and they said, you know, you have the skills and all you need is someone to take a chance on you. In my case, it was Hershey. Hershey took a chance on me, and I was able to prove to them that I am a success, and my GPA does not matter as much as it should, and as much as colleges emphasize it, which was very enlightening to me, as it showed that my skills can showcase more than what a number defines me as so much in life, you're just defined by this specific number, which is very frustrating, whether it's your GPA, your weight, your height, your age. There's so much that goes into that. That's just a single number on whatever. And all of a sudden you're just solely defined by that number, but it's not true. Even though they're telling you like you're a failure because of this one number, it's just a number. Like what is a number? I mean, it's used for addition, and I'm terrible at subtraction, and it's a calculation. It's not who you are. It's not your personality. It's not your work ethic. It's not your intelligence. It's a number. And so I really like this quote by Natalie Portman. So she graduated from Harvard and was giving a commencement speech. And she was an actress at the time. And she was basically saying, like, I felt like people were just going to judge me on being this dumb actress. They weren't going to take me serious. And that I ended up having to embrace other people's expectations, standards, and value. And she put that on herself. And it was hard. And we do that a lot too. And with imposter syndrome, it's a lot of the highly advanced and high overachieving people, as most engineers are, that are affected a lot by this. I also want to mention that a lot of times women are misdiagnosed when it comes to imposter syndrome, because a lot of times it's the environment that you're in that can cause imposter syndrome, whether it's a coworker constantly beating you down about something, or just a little microaggressions from this culture or environment that can cause a lot of these insecurities. So it's not always about like, oh, I just lack self-confidence, and so I've got imposter syndrome because of that. I mean, I'm a fairly confident person when it comes to my work, but I mean, I've been put in environments where things will get nitpicked and someone will say like some kind of backhanded compliment or something, and it makes you question everything. So it's not always you. It is, the blame should not always be on yourself, which is why, I mean, the word imposter syndrome, I mean, it's basically, sometimes I feel like it's blaming women for what they are, what they do, just different things like that. And it's difficult because you're constantly being told like, you're an imposter, you've got this disease that is typical of females and stuff. And that's not true, because sometimes it's not just about developing the confidence. I mean, yeah, that's very important, both confidence and competence, but you also need to make sure you're in an environment and a culture that allows you to thrive with that confidence and allows you to thrive in just whatever leadership or advancement that you're doing, because it's not your fault a lot of the times. A lot of times it's also the culture, the racial, the bias, whatever the type of environment that may be being projected onto you that can cause this. So I want to make sure that big takeaway is yes, do some internal investigation, figure out, okay, why do I feel like an imposter? But a lot of times look at your culture too, look at the surroundings. For me, with my imposter syndrome, when it came to my GPA, it was, a lot of it was just the academic culture of things, that they put so much value on GPA. So I reframed it and I said, look, my GPA does not matter to me as much as my experience. And it's gotten to a point where no one asks me about my GPA anymore. They ask me about my experience. What did you do with Abbott? What did you do with your lab? What did you do with Hershey? Things like that. So experience, so try to not always blame yourself for a lot of things. Sometimes it is. I mean, I have had issues where, yes, I need to just buck up and do something, because it's common to have self-doubt. It's common to be nervous going into a situation of, this is brand new. Like, what am I gonna do here? This is nerve-wracking. But if you are in a positive culture, then you can overcome that imposter syndrome, overcome those doubts and say, I can do this. But if you're not in a good culture that breeds this environment of self-deprecation, then you're not going to be able to succeed. That's the gist of it. So sometimes you have to take that step and realize, can I, one, change the culture? One of the grad students in my lab took initiative to try to change the culture of our lab to make it a little bit more inclusive, which has been absolutely amazing. Or two, you just leave the environment. I know some people who have not enjoyed certain jobs they've been in. So it's like, okay, I'm not going to accept an offer from this company because the culture was not right for me. So next, I want to talk about internalized misogyny a little bit. So what is it? It's when women subconsciously project certain ideas onto other women, even onto themselves. So this is like the formal definition of it, but there's so many different tracks that can result in this. And this has been one of the biggest issues that I personally have faced. So a big thing that I've noticed is when it comes to what defines feminine. So you get both sides of the spectrum. I've had people who tell me that you are not feminine enough. So the role of a woman is to be, a baby bringer, mother, that kind of thing. And then if someone wants to be a stay-at-home mom, like, I'm all for it. That's a tough job. Great for you. Like, if that's what you want to do, great. But sometimes people who believe that will come back on me and say, oh, you have all this, that's great. How are you going to have time to be a mom? How are you going to have time to have kids? Like, can you? And all this stuff. And it's made me feel very bad as a woman. Like, somehow I'm letting people down as a woman. I'm not womanly enough. I don't dress feminine enough in a certain role. I dress too feminine in a certain role. So it's like, what the heck is femininity? Because after my car accident, I really had to look at this, because some of my female reproductive organs were damaged a bit, which makes me more reproductively challenged, which was very hard for me to wrap my head around, because it made me feel like less of a woman, because everyone kept telling me that what the main thing of women is to make babies. And all of a sudden I can't do the role that is stereotypically a woman. So I felt like less of a woman. I felt less feminine, and it was horrible. It was a very hard time for me. And it's very hard. It's difficult for me to still talk about, because I still haven't fully wrapped my head around a lot of this stuff either. So it's about, for me, it was realizing that I'm more than a couple organs, and my femininity is more than just, whatever society defines it as. So I wear certain clothing to make me feel feminine some days. I'll wear certain clothing to make me feel confident, as different things make me feel feminine in different ways that I define as my own femininity. So it's important to define your femininity how you define it, but it's also important to not try to project your version of femininity onto another. I know a lot of engineers and a lot of coworkers who, sometimes you hold off on having kids, and that's perfectly fine. Sometimes you just don't want to have kids as you think it's gonna affect your career in some way. But don't go back on someone else who wants to have kids and say you're not a feminist because you're trying to have children or things like that, or degrade someone in some way because they are fitting a certain stereotype that you do not believe in. Slut shaming is a big thing. I mean, I'll wear sexy clothes sometimes because I want to feel confident. I want to feel good about my body, but it doesn't mean that, I'm a slut looking for attention. Like, yes, I have had sex before. Yes, I enjoy sex. Women should be able to enjoy sex, but it doesn't mean we're asking for it with our clothing either. And it doesn't mean that we should look and shame other people. I know this is a big thing that I had to deal with the whole rape culture, honestly, which is, it's hard to talk about. It's a difficult conversation, but you need to, it's a conversation that us as women need to have with ourselves as well, because the first question I always ask too is, what was she wearing? But that's not how it should be. And it's not how anyone should be. When we walk into an office building, what should we be wearing? Should we be wearing a suit and a tie? Should we be wearing a skirt? Should we be wearing pants? There's a lot of questions around, what it should be. And we start to project societal ideals onto that instead of our own ideals and our societal ideals onto others as well. So I always Maya Angelou just has amazing quotes. So courage allows successful women to fail and learn powerful lessons from the failure. So in the end, she didn't fail at all. So it's important to be courageous in recognizing your own shortcomings, which is a very, very difficult thing to do, especially when it comes to internalized misogyny. And it's not always of a femininity thing or slut shaming or kind of some of the surface stuff, but a lot of it is, personally for me, has been jealousy. As when it comes to living up to the standards of men, it's easy for me to try to fight the patriarchy. But when a woman comes back at me and says something that is very hurtful or it's kind of a backhanded compliment, that hurts a lot more than anything a man could have said. Because as a woman, I recognize you as an ally right off the bat. I shouldn't have any question. While men, you automatically question a little bit. But all of a sudden, you're getting this backlash from a woman, and it takes you aback. It's just, wow, that hurt. Even within, organizations that are meant for women, we've got, there's always going to be issues of internalized misogyny in some way or another. I know that I've presented my research at multiple SWE conferences, but there have been times where, I didn't even tell anyone about the second one because the first time I presented, I did not feel supported by some of the leadership within this organization. And that hurt. You don't expect everyone to be like, oh my gosh, this is amazing. But it's hard when people go out of their way to ignore a certain thing that you see as an accomplishment. But it makes you feel like it was even less of an accomplishment, which really hurt. So when things end up not going how you want them to, it's just that rejection almost, or that the fact that they did not say anything really, really hurts and really weighs on you and will affect how you act down the road. So it's important to kind of check yourself as well, because I know I am guilty of this because I'm a very competitive person, and we're in an environment where it's seen that there's only one woman that can be on the top. We can't have multiple women at the top, but we have to compete against each other to always fight each other and get to that top slot, when it's not true. But it's important to check how you're competing for that and make sure you aren't tearing other people down in the process. As a small action that you do may just seem like an offhanded comment, but it can really hurt someone else just in what they do, what they said, because a lot of people, people look to you as leaders, people look to you as mentors and stuff. And then all of a sudden you say something and it's like, I'm not good enough. It goes back to that imposter syndrome that we can breed in ourselves as a culture, which is very difficult to look at and really look at that in the mirror, because it's almost like a certain personality type can only succeed. It's not, even though I have this amazing accomplishments, I can't succeed because I don't have this certain ability or certain personality. I'm not an extrovert. I'm an introvert by nature. I was shaking before this talk because my anxiety was going nuts. So it's hard to recognize, and it's hard to really fight the established ways that we have been taught, and it's been internalized. And so it's difficult to recognize, but it is something that's important to address for everyone. I even know my best friend and I have had issues with this. She got an offer from our sophomore year for like a co-op position, but she is an amazing person and she has an amazing GPA and everything. But she interviewed once and then she got the job. And then I'm over here, scraping, clawing, going through 3 rounds of interviews. I've had multiple rejection letters because, I didn't have the GPA. And then I'm, finally get the offer. And then I'm going, like, I should be proud of my friend who also got the offer, but she didn't work as hard as I did. So I was jealous. I was mad. I was angry. I wasn't proud. I was envious, and I should have been proud, but my best friend just succeeded. I should have been proud of that. Why wasn't I proud of that? And it comes back to this competition that women have always bred within each other of, you have to be the best. Everyone should have an even playing field. And if you don't work as hard as I did, you're not going to succeed as much as I did. And it's something that should be addressed, and something I know I struggle with. I just told you I struggle with it. But it does not breed a good culture for success. So I'm really interested in game theory, especially the ultimatum game. So we're going to play a little bit. So there's person A and there's you. Person A is given $10 that they can distribute between the two of you however they see fit, but you can either accept or reject this offer. So they decided to give you $8, they decided to take $8 and give you $2. Would you accept the deal? Yes or no? You can put it in the chat. You can do a thumbs up, thumbs down reaction. It's like, what are your thoughts? Would you accept the deal? Yes or no? Okay, we've got some yeses. Yes, so there are some yeses, and then economists say, yes, accept the deal. Either way, you are coming out ahead $2. Why would you not accept the deal? Like, why wouldn't you? It doesn't make sense to not accept it. Well, I know I didn't accept it. I said, nope, I do not accept that deal because my dad and I played this. And I said, no, because it came down to fairness for me. I said, that is not a fair deal. It should be split 50-50. So I'll reject the $2 if it means like I can get a fair deal. So I would rather, it was in that situation, I'd accept a lose-lose situation over an extra $2 for me. And then it made me think. I was like, okay, why? And for me, it was this concept of fairness, because everyone's idea of fairness is very different. And I know I've seen this game played on various personality tests type things, if you've ever taken some, but this idea of fairness, I see like a 50-50 split would have been fair for me and I would have accepted that. But I'm not accepting anything lower. Maybe, like a 60-40 split, but I see my value as something higher than that, if that makes sense. So it comes into negotiations as well. Like there are various different studies, like how, different market cultures, do you have capitalism? Do you have barter system, socioeconomic status? There's a lot of studies that have been done on this, but the biggest takeaway for me personally was fairness. And I've seen this translate into some of my own things, like with my best friend, it wasn't fair. She didn't have to work as hard. Even though I should have been proud, I was like, you got to work as hard as I do, right? No. So it made me really consider like my own personal values when it came to competition and things like that. Because when you start competing for things, a lot of times when you find female mentors, especially older and higher up, they're absolutely amazing to talk to, but I have been told, like, I hold you to a higher standard than the men in the department because you are a woman, so I expect more from you. And that's hard. Even though we should be held at that same standard, we're still expected to continually prove ourselves, even to our female mentors. And it's a problem everywhere, but I've seen it more so in STEM, as we are constantly making ourselves fight harder and harder and harder and make sure, I don't know if it's to breed a toughness, a resilience, a what, but even though we're opening a lot of doors for women, we're almost closing them to other women ourselves, because we're saying you have to be able to break this gate as well, even though it's already been broken in a sense. Like, we have the ability to make life a little bit easier for other women who come behind, after us. So why don't we? Why do we make others struggle just as much as we do? And this is a hypothetical, obviously, not a rhetorical, that's the word, but it's something that I've personally had to think about a lot. I need to make sure that I continually open doors for women and keep those doors open by the actions that I bring into the system or whatever, the company, wherever I end up going, because it's very easy to want to make someone work as hard or go through all the hardships that you did too, because that's what seems fair. Because that I had to do it, you have to do it too. It's seen in med school. I don't think residents should be worked half to death like they are now. I don't think that's necessary with the advancements in technology, but it's almost a system. And, I've been guilty of it. It's like, I had to do it. You have to do it too. When that doesn't have to be a thing. I could give, if I was in a leadership role, I could give more time off to someone who's having a baby. I could let them go part-time. Would I make them go part-time? Or would I make them work full-time just because I had to? Would I make them, do this, that, or the other just because I had to, even though I don't have to do that to them? It's something that I really had to look at, because yes, there are some things that you need to do in terms of training, but I don't have to make you go through all of these unnecessary barriers, unnecessary hurdles that I had to go through, just not necessarily out of spite, but to try to make you more resilient in a sense. Because a lot of times, this can be seen as trauma too. And people don't always become more resilient from trauma. Sometimes you become weaker, and that's okay, because it takes a while to deal with some of this stuff. And what we may seem as fair is really not. So it's important to look at your own values and realize, in what ways can I help people, instead of trying to make it fair for everyone else. Like, I had to go through this, you had to go through this too. I know I went through that dilemma with pass, no pass. I was taking some really hard classes before, and all of a sudden people can pass, no pass them. How's that fair to me? Because we're in a pandemic, little envious child. No. So it's just, I really had to do a lot of internal looking, and something I'm still dealing with when it comes to what I see as fair, and making sure the opportunities that I have achieved and the doors that I have opened, I keep open, whether it's by myself standing there or with a bunch of door stoppers. Either way, I need to make sure that I keep those open for people to have those opportunities, and make sure they can come to me for advice and mentorship, and that they don't feel like they're going to be, belittled, or they feel like they're not a success or they're a failure just because of my own envy and jealousy and my idea of fairness. So I know I need to change that, and I've been working to change that for sure. But then comes perfectionism. Now, always in the job market, people are like, oh, don't say perfectionism as your weakness, because everyone wants a perfectionist, right? No, you don't. Perfectionism is one of the biggest issues of my anxiety, because I don't only try to have the perfect outcome in a job, I try to have the perfect life that people have stereotyped, which ends up being very difficult and makes you put on a face almost every single day of I am perfectly fine. I am an absolute success. I am a strong, confident woman who can do anything, even though inside, I'm shaking in my little boots because I don't always believe that, but I force other people to believe it. That ends up hurting me in the long run. So let's take this. This is the first image that I showed. That was my headshot. Obviously, you can tell it's been a little bit edited, right? This was the original. So why did I edit it? I saw this. I was like, that's puffy. That looks weird. No, that makes me look skinny, like a little bit malnourished. I don't like that. I struggle with an eating disorder. So like, I don't want to show that to people. Psh. Yellow teeth, gosh, it could be the lighting, it's like, I don't know, that I have something that stained my teeth that day. What? These bags under my eyes, geez, people aren't going to want to hire a tired looking person. I've got glare in my glasses. My hair looks greasy up here because I had just come in from the rain. Overall, my skin just doesn't look right. It's just all these things that I nitpicked. And I do that with every single image because I'm trying to project this image of perfection. But I've showed this to other people, this image, and they're like, you look great. They didn't see any of that. So all of a sudden, why am I nitpicking myself to the point of complete and total insecurity? Well, perfectionism is internalized depression. That's what Gloria Steinem said. And I said, yes, that's very true because we see ourselves in a very particular image, an image that society has developed for us and told us that we need to have, which is very difficult to overcome, as this is what we see every day. It can be with your body. It can be just the way you present yourself at work. I know I changed the way that I talk because I used to have a very higher pitched voice, but I lowered it intentionally because I said, men listen to that more. So it's a way you present yourself in a way that may not be you, but what you think other people want or other people desire or what society sets you up as. So it's difficult. I know it's something I'm still struggling with, as I know I want to have this perfect little life, this perfect image. I never got a fake ID. I did not drink until I was 21. Yeah, I went to some parties, but I was terrified because I was like, I'm going to mess up my image of perfection, this good girl image that is going to be perfect for someone to hire. So I did not do a lot of things. I ended up doing a lot of things that I didn't necessarily want to do or consider fun because, oh yeah, it fits this image that I want. It fits the image. What am I going to do to get this image? What am I going to do this, that, and the other? Or when it came to relationships, what do I have to do to continually present this image of a perfect relationship? Even though I am struggling internally a lot, how am I going to present this to my then boyfriend? How am I going to present this to the world? To the point where no one knows the struggle that you're actually going through. All they see is this image you project of what you see as perfection. And that hurts. I mean, you're oppressing yourself in a way. I was oppressing myself in a way. I still am, as I still struggle with this on the daily. So it's about recognizing that own oppression that you put on yourself and that perfection isn't what you want to strive for. It can be however you define it, what you want in life and everything, but you should be working to live, not living to work, especially with this image, as you are not an image that society says you should be. You are yourself. I am Emily McDonald. Who the hell is Emily McDonald? I don't want to be this image of perfection. I had a very big identity crisis because I was like, I am just this image. And it's like, my therapist was like, we're going to take away that image. What are you if you don't have that? And I was like, big old question mark, because I had no idea. So it was a lot of, who am I really? What is my identity? How do I define myself? And I do not need to be, a Van Gogh or a Monet in order to be an artist. I don't have to be, Christina Aguilera or these amazing singers to be a singer. If you enjoy something, you don't have to be perfect at it to identify as it, which is something that I've struggled with and something that I'm trying to come to terms with, because I can be anything I really want to be, even though I am not going to be perfect at it, I can still try it and I can fail. And I can fail beautifully, honestly. And sometimes it's fun to fail too. Like, I mean, when you're doing science experiments, something accidentally blows up on you, I laugh now. They're funny stories, like the mistakes I told you at the beginning. They're now funny stories that I laugh at or look onto and it's like, that was not good. But it's not something that I end up dwelling on. It's something that they're not always fun to tell, especially the ones that you're dealing with right now, because people don't like to talk about what you're dealing with right now. They like to talk about the success stories or the things that I've overcome in life. But guess what? We're all dealing with some major shit and it sucks. And it's okay to talk about it because talking about it can sometimes help you work through it because no one is this perfect being of everything, even though we like to only showcase that. So it's just about kind of embracing those failures and realizing that's your journey. Your failures are your journey of life. And they're a lot of fun sometimes because you've learned so much and you've grown so much from each of them. So there are some are more fun than others. Trauma is not fun. Do not actively go out and seek trauma. Please do not do that. But don't be afraid to fail. Don't be afraid to click the button that you're not exactly sure what it does. I mean, read the directions first, but sometimes you just gotta click it. Like, what's the worst that could happen? So, and I've done that before on really old equipment because no one has the manual. So you just gotta figure it out sometimes and not let a lot of these, the perfectionism, the internal misogyny, the imposter syndrome hold you back in any way, shape, or form. So we've got all this baggage. Now, how do we get rid of some of it? Well, one, mentors. I call it my board of directors. I've been told this before. It's people that can help guide you in your career and different questions that you ask. So I've had a mentor in my research lab. I've had, mentors in my family. I've had mentors I was in Girl Scouts. So I had those. I've got mentors from jobs that I've worked at. But it's also important to remember, who are you going to have by your side if you go to the ER? I was alone in the ER trying to advocate for myself, and that was horrible. I do not recommend that for everyone because I said, I can't burden anyone with this. And then I realized, I had a lot of people who wanted to be there for me. So who's going to be there to hold your hand while you're struggling? Who's going to be there to make you laugh when you feel like you're going to die? Who's going to be there to yell at the doctor for being an asshole? Because some of them are. It's just the fact of life. It sucks. It should change. But who's going to be there to, pick up your homework? What people do you want in your ER room with you? And make sure you surround yourself with those people too, because you're not just this person of just academia or work or something. You also have a life outside of that. And it's important that you surround yourself with people who are going to show up to the ER for you and are going to be there when you need them most. And make sure if someone is in your ER room with you, you're in their ER room as well. So if someone shows up for you, make sure you show up for them, not out of obligation, but because both of you really care about each other and really want to make sure you're okay, both physically and mentally. So with that, I'm going to kind of conclude things, open it up for some questions. I listed my dot number down there. Since this is being recorded, I didn't really want to put my phone number, but if you have additional questions, comments, concerns, go ahead and reach out. You can unmute yourself, put it in the chat. Yeah.
Emily, first of all, great presentation. Also, my question was, how have you found, has best helped you support other women in the workplace? What's been some of the tools that have helped you best?
Honestly, recognizing them for their achievements, because a lot of people are scared to talk about what they have achieved, because they're like, someone's going to tear me down. I know I personally do that. I'm like, I don't want to go through the nonsense again, but there's a lot of people that won't tell you that. So talk to people, because people like to talk about what they're doing, and then actively support them in that manner, to saying, wow, that's amazing. Like, you are doing great work. And odds are they'll be like, oh yeah, I mean, like, it's pretty cool. And support them in that way so that they can realize their accomplishments are also pretty damn amazing. Because I guarantee you, each and every one of you has this absolutely amazing thing that you have done that you're like, no, it's okay. I mean, there's more I could have done. Stop it. And make sure you stop other people from doing that too. And then realize, like, you are amazing, and that, like, the person you are encouraging is amazing. Make sure they realize that, and you are still amazing just by being, whatever your accomplishments are too. It's like their accomplishments do not somehow diminish your accomplishments. So I found just supporting people in that way and recognizing their accomplishments, showcasing their accomplishments as really good. And some of the best things that I know that people have done for me, and trusting them with work as well. That's a big thing. Giving them the task and saying, I trust you to do this, or I trust you to get this done. And then giving them that responsibility and saying, I trust you with this responsibility. I know that's personally been a big deal for me, because it's like they recognize my capabilities and they are trusting me with this responsibility. I mean, it could be something small, like I'm trusting you to get this to this location for me, as it's very important. Or it could be like, I'm trusting you to run this trial. I'm trusting you with this extra project. But that kind of, like, giving people responsibility and showcasing people's accomplishments have been some of the biggest ways that I know I have been supported and help try to support others in how I can.